Hi there. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to be here with you. Just for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be making this a brief video. But the reason I decided to come on is because recently I have been meeting with a few different couples where one partner kind of drags the other partner in, and usually that doesn't really bode that well for any kind of couples work. And I'm discovering that the partner who's being dragged in is hesitant to do this kind of work because they say they've so-called accepted the situation, even though they're clearly miserable in their marriage. So I wanted to talk to you about that today, since I've had quite a few couples in this situation come to me for help lately, and this might resonate for you even in a smaller way. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Marianne Greenbaum. I'm a licensed psychologist in New Jersey and New York, and I'm also a conscious couples coach. And I really find it most meaningful to guide overstressed parents to help them transform their relationship suffering and struggle into deep, meaningful connection and a really unshakable relationship that they feel they can trust will help them get through anything together. And so just back to these few couples that I am keeping in mind right now as I speak to you, who've recently sought my help. It's just really tragic because what these partners are saying to themselves and to me and to their partner is, I'm not interested in working on this relationship because I've accepted it the way it is. It won't really be productive. I'm fine the way it is. I really don't care to make it better. But what I'm finding underneath is so much sadness and anger and disappointment. And I wanted to talk about some of these things that might be keeping people who are really suffering from seeking the help that could really help them change and shift these dynamics that have been so deeply frustrating and disappointing in their marriages. So what this sounds like are people who say, or just act, they may not say it in words, as though they are fine in their marriage the way things are, that they could sort of care less about making it better. They seem or appear indifferent to their partner's pleas or bids for more connection. They may have just kind of emotionally checked out of the marriage. Some of them have recently had affairs. Some of the couples that are finding me recently, or one partner has had an affair. And really what's happening is they're buying into this myth that they're telling themselves. The partner who's hesitant or who's resistant to getting help is telling themselves that they've accepted the situation for what it is, that it won't matter if they try to do anything about it because they feel underneath that their relationship is beyond repair, which is really sad. So usually when people say they don't care or they're really indifferent, I know there's more underneath that. And even just during this first session that I'm thinking of with this one couple that I recently met with, it became very clear very quickly that there was so much pain beneath the surface. And what this woman shared is that, in fact, she's so upset and so miserable in her marriage, and she's felt this way for decades, that she's afraid that if she goes ahead and accepts her partner's invitation to work on things in their marriage, it might actually lead them to separate. She's afraid that there's so much rage and even feelings of hatred and just disappointment that they won't be able to tolerate it, or that I wouldn't, as their therapist, wouldn't be able to tolerate it, and they would end up in a divorce. Now, they have children, and also just for you to know, anytime I talk about clients, I really am talking about a composite, so it's not necessarily one actual couple. I'm sort of mixing different stories from different couples that I see, and always protecting their identifying information. So there's no way any of you can know who they are. But I do feel like it's important to illustrate, since I've had several couples in this situation recently, and I'm sure that it's something many of you can relate to. So the partner who's saying, you know, I don't care, really is saying, I care so much, and I'm so tired, and I've been disappointed so many times that I am afraid, I'm terrified to get my hopes up again, because if this doesn't work, this is our last ditch effort, that means I won't be able to stay together, and that means we might lose everything. We might lose it all, even though it's horrible now. This kind of normal that we've had for years and years is better than nothing at all. And so I'm sharing this because if your partner, or maybe if you felt indifferent like that, I want you to really reflect on that and think about or feel into what's underneath. Are you scared that your feelings will get out of control, that you'll explode in rage, that you'll do something impulsive, that you'll leave altogether, that you'll kind of break up your family? Do you feel that maybe checking out or not caring is a way for you or your partner maybe to protect yourself or your partner from further disappointment? Is your partner, if this is who we're talking about, so tired of trying? Have they been the ones who felt so rejected over and over and over again, and now it kind of feels like it's too late? Can you connect with maybe how difficult that must be for them? And then another big thing that I'm hearing is that the partner who doesn't want to do the work at this point is usually the one who's tried and tried and tried and felt rejected multiple times repeatedly over the years, is now feeling that if they accept their partner's, the other partner's invitation to do couples work, that means that they're sort of agreeing to things on their partner's terms, that they're somehow betraying themselves and submitting essentially to their partner's demands or terms and doing things on their partner's terms and not their own. That's a really huge one that actually comes up a ton, which I think I don't really hear many people talking about, and it's really important because if that's how you or your partner is feeling, of course it would feel, like a betrayal to do couples work, even though there could be so much in it for you or for that partner who's hesitant or flat out against doing couples work or couples therapy or couples coaching. So I think these feelings and these worries and concerns are so important to take into consideration. If you're joining me live, by the way, or watching this replay, let me know that you're here. Say hello, let me know where you're watching from, and if any of this resonates, or if you know anyone who's in this situation or who's been in this situation. If you know couples where one partner is really ready to make a change and maybe even reaching out to a therapist, and yet the partner, their partner, or maybe your partner, isn't interested or is flat out against seeking help and claiming that they're fine with things the way they are, even though you know that can't be true because things are really distant between you or between this couple if it's not you. Things have been really disconnected for years, or maybe there's conflict, or maybe there's actually no conflict because you're both just so tired of trying. And that's actually one of the most toxic, most difficult places to be in, is when people have given up. So rather than calling this acceptance, I think that's really not accurate, even though someone may say they've accepted the situation and they just want to kind of live, separate lives essentially in their marriage. And what people will sometimes say is, just let me do my thing, just let me be, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. They're kind of more like roommates or co-parents without their own connection. What they really mean is, I'm afraid because I've tried so many times, I feel like I've failed so many times, I've been rejected so many times that I'm exhausted, depleted, and terrified that this won't work. And if this doesn't work, then I really don't know, then there's really no hope. So not trying, in a way, is keeping that little bit of glimmer of hope still alive, that there's something out there that can help them. And I know it may sound counterintuitive, but that's sort of how our mind works. So what can you do in these situations? And actually, before I go into that, I want to just say, like, the problem is, even if you're telling yourself or your partner's telling themselves that they've accepted the situation and they're just going to make the most of it for the kids or for yourselves, and continue and sort of continue on this path because it feels like the safest way forward, even though it's miserable. The problem is that this is really taxing on our immune system, right? We're wired for connection as human beings. And feeling isolated or distant or so hugely misunderstood or alone in your most important relationship is a recipe for our chronic stress response, for our alarm systems to be chronically activated. Our cortisol levels shoot up. Our immune system becomes less able to handle any setbacks or disease. It can cause depression, anxiety, and one of the biggest things that ultimately, hopefully partners understand, and in these couple of cases that I've recently seen, I'm so grateful that they can see this because they have decided to move forward, is that it's taxing on your children, right? If you're in this situation, and even if there's no overt conflict or loud arguing, but you're feeling really distant and it's been years or maybe months since you've had genuine human contact with your partner or affection or felt generous towards them, and you feel like you have to constantly protect against more anger or hurt or disappointment, it's inevitable that your children will still pick up on it. This is where they learn what to expect in close relationships. This is where they learn what's possible for them, what relationships are all about. And this is where they learn, whether they need to kind of really lower their expectations in relationship. And so it's really important to do this for your children, if not for yourselves. And I would argue that even if the outcome is that down the line, months and months from now, you do decide to separate, it's still important to separate in a way that, it's always damaging in some way, but is mindful and recognizes the impact on your children, and a way that supports you in doing everything you can to be aware of what your children's needs are and what they're learning from you. And that positions you to co-parent well even after you separate, if in that worst case scenario, if that comes true. So hi to whoever just joined. Tell me, say hello and let me know where you're joining from. I can't see who you are. I can just see that people are joining. So this is really for partners where either both partners or one partner is feeling like, they've been miserable for so many years, and now there's an opportunity to seek some help. But it's been so long since you or your partners felt hopeful that you kind of tell yourself that you can be self-sufficient and you don't need your partner, and you're really indifferent to what happens in your relationship because you couldn't care less. So I'm suggesting that that's not actually true, that it is a way that your psyche tries to protect you from further disappointment and hurt because you've been hurting and in so much pain for so long, and there's only so much you can take without feeling like there's some relief in sight. And so understanding these meanings underneath, and understanding that there usually is like an ocean of hurt and pain underneath, can really help to soften those feelings and take some action so that both partners can find someone to guide them in a way that will honor both of them and both of their experiences. So how to look for a therapist? I think this is something I get asked all the time, and there's no one clear answer or cookie cutter that will work for everyone, but there are guidelines. There are things that I feel very strongly about when I help people find a therapist that's a good fit for them. And why this is important is, really important is because we know that the relationship with your therapist is the most healing, curative factor. It's the biggest predictor, the strongest predictor of how you'll fare in therapy. Even more important than your therapist's credentials, experience, anything else like that. Now, of course, that's all important. You want to find someone who's licensed, who's experienced, who's been doing this work for a while, who's licensed in their jurisdiction to do therapy. It can be confusing, I know, and if you have any questions about that, feel free to post them here or comment below afterwards in the replay and let me know. I know there can be a lot of different degrees to sort through and licensing credentials to look at, but beyond all of that, I'm assuming you find someone who has that experience and credentials and background in education. I would argue that one of the biggest things that can help you find a therapist, a good couples therapist, is your own intuition, your gut feelings, because they don't lie. And that can really help you tune into whether this is a person that you can imagine or envision yourself over time trusting or entrusting with these very delicate parts of you. So here are a few qualities of what I consider a really, really great therapist, and you can think about this as well if you're considering finding some support. So we already said it needs to be someone you can imagine trusting over time, really trusting your intuition around, how you feel in the presence of this person. Someone who can uphold firm, predictable boundaries, someone who won't get caught up in your drama with your partner, someone who can really hold their own but still be very gentle and loving and give you both the benefit of the doubt, someone who can really hold a healing space for both of you, a container that's, again, like we said, reliable and predictable and clear, where you know what to expect and what goes and what doesn't go, where that's really clear. Someone who can help you bring into awareness the parts of you that have gone underground long ago. So I'm biased. I think that it's really important to have someone who has training in human development and childhood development, who can help you understand the parts of yourself that may be outside of your awareness, that are getting activated with your partner in the here and now. Someone who can really help you access those hidden wishes and dreams and old wounds, because even though they're in the past, they're obviously getting reenacted or manifesting in some way now. Otherwise, you wouldn't be human. What else? Someone who can handle feedback, who's not there for you to be their friend or to be liked by you. Someone who can really handle difficult, big feelings like anger and rage and hatred, even if it's anger that you feel towards them. I think that's so important. And someone who knows how to repair any misunderstandings, who can really model that for you, almost like being in a relationship lab, who can show you what it looks like to own the ways they may have misunderstood you or your partner, and take responsibility for that, and really be curious about how they could understand you in a way that's more accurate. So I know this is a lot, but these are all things that are really important. And the last thing, but not least, which I think is super crucial, not everyone does, but I have a very, very strong opinion about, is I only refer my clients to therapists who have been or either still are in their own therapy. I just feel very strongly about seeing a therapist who's never had their own therapy or doesn't know what it feels like, or doesn't, not because they're bad, I'm sure they're well-meaning and they can still be helpful to some people, but I feel like not having been in your own therapy really limits, as a therapist, your capacity to know what's possible emotionally, to know the potential. If you haven't emotionally lived in that place, how can you guide couples, to a place that's more conscious? That takes into account their personal history, their personal story, their narrative, their experience in their family of origin, and what that can feel like, and what it can feel like to be doing this work, and how vulnerable it is, and how much courage it requires. So that's something that I would encourage you to ask your therapist, is whether they've ever had, or a potential therapist, whether they've been in their own therapy. And if it's someone who doesn't feel comfortable sharing that, to me, that would feel a little bit, that would be a concern for me. I'm not saying it needs to be for you, but that would be a concern for me. They don't have to tell you the details, but I think most therapists who are really solid would be willing to share that. They almost see it as a given. So that's something to think about as well that I don't really hear other people talking about. Let me know if this is helpful. Let me know if these are things, if you've ever been in any kind of couples work or your own individual work, if these are things that you considered, if there's anything else that was important to you, what your experience has been. Feel free to share as little or as much as you feel able to. But again, these are really important qualities to look for, because anyone you work with in this intimate way, can really have a huge impact, and can really, either help to support you and your partner to create new experiences, new emotional experiences, and restore trust and transform conflict and disappointment into deeper connection, or if they're lacking some of this experience or self-awareness even, they may be more limited in helping you. And I don't think it can be damaging, but you won't be able to get as far. So just want to see if there are any comments so far. Okay, I know many of you are going to be watching the replay, so I'm really curious to hear what you think, or if you've ever been in a situation, or you know anyone who's been in this situation where one partner is really ready now, finally maybe, to take that leap and look for support, and the other partner is feeling too burnt out, indifferent. Basically, they've resigned themselves, but resentfully. They're kind of stuck in resentful resignation and have given up hope. And so these are just some things to think about in terms of understanding what might be underneath that hesitation to jump in and receive that kind of support, and why it's so important to rethink it and reevaluate it. Because when I have spoken to people who felt this way, what they started to realize is that while they might be retaliating or getting back at their partner and giving them a dose of their own medicine, kind of saying, I want you to feel what it was like for me when I was pleading with you to come with me to therapy, and you said no, or you said you'd rather, do something else, or do a million other things first, and you weren't willing to prioritize us. And now I'm not ready anymore. It's too late, but what they're doing, while they might still be punishing their partner, is they're depriving themselves too of an opportunity to be understood, to have more of what they need, more of their own needs acknowledged and honored and known and met. So while it might be meeting, some of their need to hurt their partner, it's usually also hurting themselves and hurting their children. Let me know what you think, any reactions you have, anything you might disagree with. I'm really curious to hear your comments, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye, guys.